Neurotech International is a company that I've only recently joined the board of. It's probably been about a month and a half, and it's always been an exciting opportunity for me to join in the cannabinoid space. I've watched this space for some time. I've been involved in listing a number of companies all in the healthcare space, and I think that this particular company is exciting, and why I wanted to get involved is because I think that cannabinoid products have been very understudied for a very long time, but there is certainly some very exciting outcomes in terms of neurological disorders that these cannabinoid products can potentially treat, and we're focused on finding commercial applications for that. So as a company, as David mentioned, we're focused on development and commercialization of neurological solutions. But we already have a product in the neurological space, which is called Mente, and this product has already been approved. It's for sale, and although our core focus is switching to the cannabinoid space, there is a particular role for Mente in the clinical trials that we have running in children. So that is going to be a main use of the Mente product moving forward for us. And we have, in fact, licensed in these strains of cannabinoids from Dolce Can Global. It's an Australian cannabis grower, and these strains are very unique. They express very high levels of certain CBDs that are shown to be very effective for neurological disorders. And also, they have little to no THC, which is, I think, very important from a regulatory perspective as we go down that pathway towards commercialization. Next. So just on the Mente device, it's proven technology. It's the world's first home-based brain training therapy for children with autism. And it's a very good device. The sales of the product hasn't been spectacular to date. That's largely for the reason why we have pivoted also now into another neurological space in cannabinoids. But this particular product is still being sold, and we think that there's going to be an increasing market for it going forward. It's not the sole focus of the company going forward, but it does play an important role in terms of the clinical trials that we have to come in the cannabinoid space. Next. So in terms of the recognition globally, it's CE marked, which is fantastic. And it's actually been distributed in Greece. It's added to the UK's National Autism Services Directory. It's been adopted by various institutes, and it has been featured in some various publications. So moving on to the cannabis strains. So we do, as I mentioned, we have this global license with Dolce Can, and it has this amazing potential to treat various illnesses, including autism, epilepsy, and ADHD, and perhaps a range of further neurological disorders as we continue to explore it. So it does, in fact, have all these specific cannabinoids that have been largely the focus of attention in the medical cannabis space. And they are expressing very high levels of these particular cannabinoids. So that is the real focus for us moving through our clinical trials. And it absolutely complements our Mente technology, which we'll be using in those trials. So there are particular neurological disorders that can benefit from this, and they actually influence the brain's CB1 and CB2 receptors, which is really an interesting outcome of the cannabis research. And we think that they can stimulate the endocannabinoid system in the body, which sends certain signals to address health disorders. And there's a huge amount of momentum in this particular research. And, there's the research being conducted by Ben Gurion University in Israel showed significant and moderate improvement for children who use cannabis for sleep deprivation and autism and so forth. There's also Murdoch Children's research that has done some studies. And we ourselves are conducting studies with Monash University Hospital, which is the subject of our clinical results that we've had to date. So these results were put out some time ago. It really just it shows that the samples that we have expressed the certain cannabinoids that the medical research in marijuana or cannabis have shown that are important for neurological research. We've shown that we have samples that have certain cannabinoids like CBDA that are expressing higher levels than just normal CBD. And we have commenced in vitro testing in human cells in these cell cultures, which is the precursor to us moving into those human trials. And if we are successful, then we will be moving into those human trials with great gusto. We recently raised capital to fund those clinical trials. So I expect there'll be significant research or significant news moving forward on that. So our pathway, we need to complete these assay assessments. That's the process that we're in now. We have to finalize our dosing for those human trials. And then when we move into the human trials, we'll be going under an open label compassionate use. These are effectively treatments for children, particularly where other treatment has not been successful. So that's how you get a compassionate pathway. We're certainly collaborating with senior technical clinical advisors, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And then we'll go through the regulatory submission process. So these are the preliminary results that we released a couple of weeks ago. And I might add that we're presently in a trading halt awaiting the outcome of further preliminary results. So I can't discuss those right now, but they will come soon. And I'll be very happy to talk about those once they've been released. But in terms of these preliminary results, what we demonstrated was some fantastic outcomes based on the samples that we've done. And they're all statistically demonstrate that there's a 60% or up to 60% reduction in brain cell inflammation as a result of our strains, and that we also improved overall cell health and viability in the absence of a toxic. So a toxic is essentially taking those healthy cells and then adding a toxic like a glutamate, which damages them and kills them, and then we add our product to see what comes. Now, this is the standard clinical trials that are done with cannabinoid products. And we can show, compared to CBD alone, which is the standard that you compare to, that we had significant outcomes in terms of increase in overall brain health up to 80%, and also in the mitochondrial viability and output has also increased by up to 60%. So these are outstanding results that we've demonstrated in those clinical cell cultures. Now, this then needs to be replicated in the human cells, which is what we're moving into human trials for. But it certainly does give us a great degree of confidence moving into those trials. And we think that we're onto something very special with our particular strains, which I might add again, express little to no THC, which is really, I think, in my personal opinion, very, very important when you go down the regulatory pathway, because regulatory approval for products that contain THC, I think are going to be problematic. Imagine if you're giving a product to, say, an autistic child that has THC in it, is that going to affect their concentration at school? I suspect yes. So you really want to see what these CBDs that we have can do without the presence of THC. That, I think, is most important. So it's a very huge market opportunity. We know that the size of the cannabis market is growing every year. There's huge industries in California and Canada, and also growing Australia and Europe and so forth. So this is a major, major market. I think it's interesting that we've had research done into opioid-based drugs for consistently over the last 100 years, but in the cannabis space, it's really just been in the last 10 years. So there's a huge amount of interest in this, and what these cannabinoid products can do in a whole new market opportunity, which is huge, and I think it's going to grow much further as we move forward. In terms of my team, as I said, I've recently joined the board. I'm a biotechnology entrepreneur. I've founded a number of biotechnology companies or healthcare companies. They've all done exceedingly well at different times. Their share prices have been up. In the case of one company, was up over 500% after the first year. I'm very proud of them all. I think they've all got great opportunities. But Neurotech being my most recent venture, I'm very excited about, because I think it has tremendous upside. Mark Davies, he was the former chairman of this company. He stepped back to non-executive director. He's got a huge amount of experience in the banking space, investment banking and capital raising and so forth. And Winton Willisey is a very well-known and experienced company director. He's also based in Perth with me. And I appreciate everyone's talent on the board as we take this company forward. In terms of our share price, we have had a significant lift in the share price, perhaps maybe since I joined the board, as you can see there. But there's certainly, I think what I bring to the company is greater investor attention to what we're doing, which I think in the small cap space for healthcare is really important, that investors can see and follow that the company is making progress. And I expect as we continue to make progress, moving down these preclinical studies and then into the human trials, that we will have a lot of eyes on the company, which I think is where we're going to demonstrate our share price growth. There's nothing worse than particularly healthcare companies that are doing fantastic things, but nobody's following them, no one's looking. And I think in the case of Neurotech, there's plenty of eyes on the company. People are watching what we're doing. And I think I can't tell you what the results are going to be of these studies until we've done them, but I'm confident that good results will be well rewarded. We have cash in the bank now, having recapitalized only a week and a half ago. And, you know, at $15 million market cap, I think we're well undervalued. And that's my presentation. I'd be open to any questions that may come, but I'm excited to be here and I'm excited about what the company has to come in terms of hopefully very good news flow. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Brian. A couple of questions have come in. In relation to studies on children or clinical studies on children, are there any additional hurdles that you may need to consider as compared to adults?
Well, certainly the THC component of these cannabinoids is a factor, particularly for children. As I mentioned, in terms of their concentration in school, you certainly don't want them going to school stoned in any way. So I think you have to have little to no presence of THC. You can treat them on compassionate grounds, which is the process that we're going. It's basically an easier and cheaper pathway to regulatory approval. And I certainly like to see our products expand into adults as well. But in terms of children particularly, the product really just has to be safe. And that's one thing that's very important to mention about cannabinoid products. I don't believe there's been a single fatality due to cannabis in the history of science. So it's a very safe product. And in terms of commercialization, going through your clinical process, when you can already demonstrate that the product is fundamentally safe, then you're only looking at efficacy. And that is a big, big difference between all the other biotechs out there doing whatever treatment they are. They still have to prove their product is safe, and our product is safe.
And do you have measures in place, or how do you protect the IP around this product?
Well, we have this license with Can Global, Dolce Can. And so these are our strains. These strains are expressing CBD levels above and beyond anything else that's ever been published in respect to cannabinoids. So there are strains, no one else can have them. We have the exclusive license. So on that basis, we are protected, but we have patents associated with that. So these are unique strains and they're ours, and that is our fundamental protection.
And in terms of markets, clearly initially focused in Australia, any other markets that jump out at you as ones to focus on from a regulatory point of view?
I should also say we have the plant breeder rights in respect to Can Global, but in terms of the global markets, yes, Australia is a fundamental market because we'll be going down the TGA route, but we'll certainly be looking to get approval in other markets, particularly CE in Europe. That is a big one that tends to follow the TGA. In the clinical trials can be done in Australia without having to be replicated in Europe. In the US market, they typically like to see you do trials in the United States in order to get approval there. And that's obviously a major market for us, but small steps, we'll get there.